At 6 going home. But in the past 17 days, he had shot down 21 enemy planes by doing what other pilots would not. When Japanese fighters appeared, he broke formation and attacked alone. The pilots around him called him Butcher Bob. That morning, 21 Japanese fighters rose to intercept. Standard orders said, "Stay with the bombers." Hansen rolled over and dove straight at the enemy. Subscribe to No Man's Land to hear what happened next, and to help keep these forgotten World War II stories alive. Robert Hansen was not supposed to become famous. He was born in 1920 in India, the son of American Methodist missionaries. His childhood was spent far from the United States, in small mission communities where discipline and self-control were expected, not praised. There was no glamour, no talk of war, just routine, structure, and hard work. As a teenager, Hansen became a competitive wrestler. He trained relentlessly and earned a reputation for strength, endurance, and mental toughness. Wrestling taught him something that would later define his flying style: how to stay calm while under extreme pressure, and how to calculate moves when exhaustion set in. When Hansen returned to the United States, he joined the Marine Corps. He did not stand out as loud or charismatic. He was quiet, focused, methodical. In training, instructors noticed that he did not panic when situations went wrong. He adjusted. He solved problems quickly. That trait would keep him alive. Hansen arrived in the South Pacific in June of 1943. He was assigned to Marine Fighting Squadron 214, better known as the Black Sheep Squadron. The unit was already legendary, but it also had one of the highest casualty rates in the Pacific. Pilots did not last long there. His first combat kill came on August 4th. A single Japanese fighter, clean, efficient. By the end of August, he had 2 confirmed victories. Nothing remarkable by wartime standards. At least, not yet. Then, November came. During the landings at Empress Augusta Bay, Hansen attacked a group of Japanese torpedo bombers alone. He forced several to drop their bombs before they could reach the beach. He shot down 3. Then his own aircraft was hit. His fuel tank ruptured. His Corsair caught fire. Hansen ditched in the ocean and spent 6 hours alone in a life raft before being rescued after dark. Most pilots would have been shaken. Some would have requested reassignment. Hansen did neither. He transferred to another Corsair squadron and went back into combat. By early January 1944, Hansen had 5 confirmed kills. Respectable, but not extraordinary. Then something changed. On January 14th, over Simpson Harbor, Hansen became separated from his squadron. Alone, he dove into a formation of Japanese fighters preparing to attack American bombers. In 12 minutes, he shot down 5 enemy aircraft. He landed with 14 bullet holes in his plane and barely enough fuel to make it back. From that day forward, Hansen stopped flying like everyone else. He no longer waited for the enemy to come to him. He went looking for them. When Japanese formations appeared, other pilots held position and protected the bombers. Hansen broke formation and attacked alone. Kill after kill followed. January 20th. 1 enemy fighter destroyed. January 22nd. 3 more. January 24th. 4 in a single engagement. January 26th. 3 more. 16 days. 21 confirmed kills. The other pilots started calling him Butcher Bob, not as a joke, not as praise, but because of how he fought. Hansen flew with cold precision, no wasted motion, no hesitation. He did not avoid danger. He calculated it. His commanding officer tried to ground him, told him he had done enough. Hansen was scheduled to go home in early February. His tour was almost over. But the war was not done with Robert Hansen yet. And neither was Rabaul. Rabaul was not just another target. It was the most heavily defended base in the entire Pacific theater. Located on the northeastern tip of New Britain, it served as Japan's main stronghold for air and naval power in the South Pacific. Every American pilot knew the name. Many never returned from it. The harbor at Rabaul was surrounded by mountains, and those mountains were covered with radar stations and observation posts. Japanese spotters could see incoming aircraft long before they reached the target. Anti-aircraft guns ringed the harbor in layers. Light guns, heavy guns, naval guns mounted on shore. Once aircraft entered the area, escape routes were limited. Japanese fighter strength at Rabaul was also immense. Intelligence estimates counted roughly 70 operational enemy fighters based there in January of 1944. Zeros, Tojos, experienced pilots. Many had survived years of combat. They knew every approach path, every altitude advantage, every mistake American pilots tended to make. Since November, Marine squadrons had lost 43 pilots over Rabaul. Not damaged aircraft, not wounded men. Pilots who simply never came back. The losses were so severe that missions to Rabaul were considered among the most dangerous assignments a Marine aviator could receive. On January 30th, the mission plan was simple and brutal. 18 Avenger torpedo bombers would strike Simpson Harbor. Their job was to hit shipping, fuel stores, and harbor facilities. Escorting them were only 8 F4U Corsairs, 8 fighters to protect 18 slow bombers against dozens of enemy interceptors. The bombers would fly at 12,000 feet. The Corsairs would hold high cover at 15,000. If the Japanese launched everything they had, the escort would be badly outnumbered. There would be no reinforcements, no second wave. Once the mission began, the outcome would be decided in minutes. Robert Hansen understood this. Every pilot did. They knew that if the Japanese fighters broke through, the torpedo bombers would be slaughtered. And they also knew that once combat began over Rabaul, survival depended on speed, altitude, and decisions made in seconds. For Hansen, this mission was supposed to be his last. 1 week later, he was scheduled to leave combat forever. Instead, he was flying straight back into the most dangerous sky in the Pacific. By early January 1944, Robert Hansen had 5 confirmed aerial victories. That number alone earned respect, but it did not explain what happened next. Over the following 16 days, Hansen would do something no Marine pilot had ever done before, or would do again. It began on January 14th over Simpson Harbor. Hansen was escorting American bombers when he became separated from his squadron at high altitude. Below him, a large group of Japanese fighters was forming to attack the bombers. Standard doctrine was clear. Do not engage alone. Stay with the formation. Protect the bombers. Hansen ignored the doctrine. He rolled inverted and dove straight into the enemy formation. In 12 minutes, he shot down 5 Japanese fighters. The engagement was violent and close. His Corsair was hit repeatedly. When he landed, the aircraft had 14 bullet holes and only 3 gallons of fuel remaining. The ground crews stared at the damage in silence. No one could explain how he had survived. After that day, the pattern repeated again and again. On January 20th, Hansen shot down 1 enemy fighter. On January 22nd, he destroyed 3 more in a single mission. On January 24th, he became separated again and shot down 4 Japanese aircraft alone over Simpson Harbor. On January 26th, he added 3 more. 16 days, 21 confirmed kills. The numbers spread quickly across the South Pacific. Pilots from other squadrons came to see him. They expected a reckless thrill-seeker. Instead, they found a quiet man who spoke little and thought constantly. Hansen did not fight with emotion, he fought with calculation. When enemy aircraft appeared, other pilots maintained formation discipline. Hansen broke away and attacked before the enemy could organize. He used speed, altitude, and surprise to tear formations apart. He forced Japanese fighters to chase him, drawing them away from the bombers. It worked, but it was also dangerous beyond reason. His commanding officer, Major Robert Owens, tried to stop him. Twice, he ordered Hansen grounded. Hansen was scheduled to rotate home in early February. His tour was complete. He had done more than enough. Hansen acknowledged the orders. Then he flew again. By January 26th, the nickname had spread through every squadron in the region. They called him Butcher Bob. Not because he was cruel, but because of how efficiently enemy aircraft vanished when he entered the fight. And now, on January 30th, all of that history was behind him. Ahead was Rabaul, and the most dangerous mission of his life. January 30th, 1944, began before sunrise at Piva North Airfield on Bougainville. The briefing was short and blunt. Intelligence reported major Japanese shipping activity inside Simpson Harbor at Rabaul. The target was high value. The defenses were expected to be extreme. 18 Avenger torpedo bombers would strike the harbor. 8 F4U Corsair fighters would escort them. No reinforcements, no backup. Once airborne, the mission would stand or fall on its own. Robert Hansen walked to his aircraft in silence. Bureau number 5, 6039. The same Corsair he had flown for weeks. The same aircraft that had already carried him through multiple engagements over Rabaul. The engine started on the 3rd blade. The sound of the Pratt & Whitney radial filled the air. At 0648, the Corsairs lifted off and formed up with the bombers. By 7:30, the formation crossed the northern coast of Bougainville. Rabaul lay 90 miles ahead. Hansen checked his ammunition. 6 .50 caliber machine guns, 400 rounds per gun, 2,400 rounds total. Enough for several engagements, if he lived long enough to use them. Then the call came over the radio. Enemy aircraft, multiple contacts, climbing fast from Rabaul. Lookouts identified 21 Japanese fighters rising to meet the strike force, 17 Mitsubishi Zeros and 4 Nakajima Tojos. The enemy was below, climbing hard. The intercept was imminent. Marine doctrine was clear. Stay with the bombers. Hold formation. Force the enemy to fight through the escort. Never leave the strike unprotected. The other Corsair pilots held position. Hansen did not. He rolled his aircraft inverted and pushed the nose down. The Corsair accelerated rapidly. Airspeed passed 400 miles per hour. He was diving alone into a formation 21 times his size. The goal was not survival. The goal was disruption. If he could scatter the enemy formation, force them to chase him even for seconds, the bombers might survive. The math was brutal. 1 fighter against 21. The odds said Hansen would be dead almost immediately. But as his Corsair screamed downward toward the rising Japanese fighters, Robert Hansen had already made his decision. The battle over Rabaul had begun. Hansen's Corsair tore through the sky at more than 400 miles per hour. Below him, the Japanese fighters were still climbing, packed tightly together and focused on the incoming bombers. They did not expect a single aircraft to attack them head-on. Hansen selected the lead 0. It was a calculated choice. In air combat, destroying the leader often caused confusion and hesitation. At 800 yards, the Japanese pilot finally saw him. The formation began to turn. It was already too late. At 400 yards, Hansen pressed the trigger. All 6 machine guns opened fire at once. The bullets struck the Zero's engine and cockpit. Smoke poured from the cowling. The fighter rolled onto its back and fell out of formation. One enemy aircraft was gone. Hansen pulled out of the dive and climbed through the shattered formation. The Japanese fighters scattered in every direction. The intercept had failed. Some pilots turned toward the bombers. Others turned after Hansen. The sky over Rabaul became chaos. 15 Japanese fighters chose to pursue the lone Corsair. Hansen climbed hard, using speed to regain altitude. Tracer fire streaked past his canopy. One round tore through the tail. Another struck the wing. None were fatal. At the top of his climb, Hansen rolled inverted and dove again. This time, he attacked from above and behind. The second Zero never saw him. A short burst tore the aircraft apart. Pieces of wing and fuselage spun away. No parachute appeared. 2 enemy fighters down. Now the Japanese pilots understood what they were facing. They fired from multiple directions, trying to trap him. Hansen broke left, then right, using the Corsair's superior roll rate to escape firing solutions. He dove again, leveled out, then climbed straight up. When he rolled over at the top, he saw the enemy formation below him, scattered and searching. They had lost cohesion. They were no longer a unit. They were individual aircraft. Hansen dove once more. The third Zero exploded under his guns. Smoke and debris filled the air. The Japanese attack on the bombers had collapsed completely. The Avengers were already passing through the harbor below, beginning their run. Hansen pulled away, climbing hard. His Corsair was already damaged. Fuel was burning fast. Ammunition was dropping. But the job was not finished. 15 Japanese fighters were still in the sky. And now, every one of them knew exactly who they were hunting. The Japanese pilots regrouped quickly. 15 fighters formed a wide defensive circle below Hansen at roughly 8,000 feet. It was a standard tactic. Each aircraft covered the one ahead of it. Any attacker diving on a single fighter would immediately come under fire from the next. American pilots feared this formation for a reason. It worked. Hansen climbed above them and circled once, watching. The bombers were already pulling away from Simpson Harbor. Their mission was complete. Doctrine said Hansen should disengage and rejoin the escort. He did not. He checked his ammunition. Enough remained for one more sustained fight. He checked his aircraft. Damage was visible, but it was still flying. Hansen made his decision. He rolled over and dove, but this time he did not attack straight through the circle. Instead, he entered at an angle, matching the direction of the Japanese rotation. The closure rate dropped. The geometry changed. Hansen was no longer cutting across the formation. He was moving with it. At 600 yards, the Japanese pilots realized the mistake. The circle began to collapse, but it was already too late. Hansen opened fire on the nearest Zero. The cockpit shattered. The fighter flipped and fell away. 4 down. Hansen pulled out inside the formation instead of climbing away. For a few seconds, he was flying in the same direction as the enemy fighters. The Japanese pilots behind him could not fire without hitting their own aircraft. The pilots ahead could not turn without colliding with those behind them. Hansen fired again. Another Zero lost its wing and spun downward. 5 down. The circle disintegrated. Fighters broke in every direction. Some climbed, some dove. Others turned sharply, trying to escape. The organized defense was gone. What remained was chaos. Hansen climbed out of the broken formation, pulling hard against the G-forces. Tracers passed close. One hit the wing root, another tore fabric from a control surface. The Corsair shuddered, but held together. Below him, the Japanese fighters were no longer protecting the harbor. They were reacting, chasing, surviving. Hansen had achieved the impossible. He had shattered a 15-plane defensive formation alone. But the fight was far from over. Because now the Japanese pilots were no longer scattered. They were angry, and they were coming for him together. The fight changed after the circle broke. The Japanese pilots stopped acting as scattered individuals and began coordinating again. Small groups formed. 2 fighters would attack while others stayed high, waiting for an opening. The chaos was ending. Discipline was returning. Hansen felt the change immediately. His Corsair was no longer clean. Warning signs were everywhere. Hydraulic fluid streamed along the fuselage. The engine temperature needle crept upward. Control response felt uneven. The aircraft was wounded. 6 Japanese fighters formed behind him. They were no longer chasing wildly. They were patient. One would attack. When Hansen maneuvered to evade, another would slide into position. The pressure was constant. Hansen dove to gain speed. The Corsair accelerated, but not like before. The engine was losing power. The temperature climbed deeper into the red. He climbed again, trying to regain altitude, but the Japanese fighters climbed with him. They were lighter. They closed the distance. Tracer fire crossed his path. One round punched through the wing. Another struck the fuselage behind the cockpit. The armor plate held. Hansen kept flying. He pulled into a vertical maneuver, then rolled over the top. 2 enemy fighters overshot. Hansen fired a short burst. 1-0 lost its tail and spun downward. 6 down. But the cost was growing. A control cable snapped. The right aileron responded sluggishly. Rolling left was easy. Rolling right took effort. The aircraft vibrated violently as the engine struggled against overheating metal. The Japanese pilots saw it. They pressed harder. 5 fighters now stayed close. Too close. Hansen could not turn without exposing himself. He could not climb without losing speed. He could not dive without being followed. This was how pilots died. Hansen checked his ammunition. Less than half remained. He checked his instruments. Oil pressure was dropping. The engine would not last much longer. The fight had reached its final phase. Hansen made a decision. He stopped trying to win. He turned toward home. As he dove southeast, away from Rabaul, the Japanese fighters followed for several seconds. Then they broke off. Fuel was limited. Their base was behind them. Chasing a damaged Corsair into open ocean was not worth the risk. Hansen was alone again. But now he had a different enemy, his own failing aircraft. Hansen flew southeast over open ocean, holding the Corsair together by instinct and calculation. The Japanese fighters were gone, but the danger remained. The engine temperature needle was deep in the red. Oil pressure dropped steadily. The Pratt and Whitney radial was destroying itself. Hansen reduced throttle slightly. The engine protested but stabilized. Airspeed fell. Every mile now depended on balance. Too much power, and the engine would seize. Too little, and he would not reach land. Below him, the Pacific was empty. No ships, no rescue aircraft. If the engine failed, he would ditch alone. He checked his gauges again. Fuel was not the problem. Oil was. The pressure dropped into the 50s. Then the 40s. The engine began to knock. Metal struck metal inside the cowling. The vibration spread through the airframe. After long minutes, land appeared ahead. Bougainville. Green jungle against blue water. Hansen adjusted his course and descended slowly. The airfield at Piva North came into view. Then, the engine failed. The propeller stopped. The noise vanished. The Corsair became a glider. Hansen lowered the landing gear using the manual system. 3 green lights appeared. The aircraft was heavy and damaged, but controllable. He lined up with the runway. Altitude dropped fast, 800 feet per minute. The runway rushed toward him. There would be no second attempt. At 100 feet, Hansen flared gently. The main gear touched down hard but straight. The tail wheel settled. The Corsair rolled and slowed, finally stopping near the far end of the runway. Fire crews surrounded the aircraft. Ground crews ran in. Hansen climbed out of the cockpit and stood on the wing. The Corsair looked destroyed. Bullet holes covered the fuselage. Fabric was torn from the wings. Hydraulic fluid and oil coated the aircraft. 47 hits were counted before the crew stopped counting. Hansen walked away. But the fight was not finished. Because the war was about to take him anyway. Robert Hansen should not have flown again. After January 30th, his record stood at 25 confirmed victories. He had become one of the highest-scoring Marine fighter pilots in the Pacific. War correspondents arrived almost immediately. His name appeared in newspapers back home. A Medal of Honor recommendation was already moving through command channels. Most importantly, Hansen was scheduled to rotate home. In just 7 days, he would board a transport ship and leave combat behind. His war was supposed to be over. On February 3, 1944, another strike mission was planned against Rabaul. 8 Corsairs were required. 1 pilot became ill during the night. The squadron was suddenly short. Hansen volunteered. His commanding officer tried to refuse. He reminded Hansen that his tour was complete, that he had done more than enough. Hansen insisted. The mission needed a pilot. He was available. He was ready. The repaired Corsair lifted off shortly after sunrise. The mission itself went smoothly. The bombers struck their targets. Japanese fighters were engaged and driven off. No American aircraft were lost. On the return flight, as the formation passed Cape St. George, Hansen broke away. Below him stood a Japanese lighthouse used as an observation post. Hansen dove and opened fire. Anti-aircraft guns responded instantly. Tracer rounds filled the air. As Hansen pulled up from the strafing run, his right wing struck the water. The impact was catastrophic. The wing tore away. Fuel ignited. The Corsair rolled violently. For a brief moment, it appeared the aircraft might recover. Then it inverted and slammed into the ocean at high speed. The aircraft disintegrated on impact. No parachute was seen. No life raft deployed. Robert Murray Hansen was 23 years old. He died 7 days before he was scheduled to return home. He was posthumously promoted to captain. He was awarded the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross. His name was inscribed on the Wall of the Missing. His official score remains 25 confirmed victories. But on January 30th, when he faced 21 enemy fighters alone, some of what he destroyed could never be counted. What can be counted is this: 1 pilot, 1 aircraft, against impossible odds, and a legacy that refused to disappear.